Going to discuss about choice. Under theory of consumer choice, we are going to learn about the meaning, consumer behavior, approaches to the study of consumer behavior, meaning of cardinal approach, law of diminishing marginal utility, ordinal utility analysis accordingly, law of diminishing marginal utility, assumptions, exceptions, or limitations in importance. Consumer behavior refers to the study of how individual customers, groups, or organizations select, buy, use, and dispose ideas, goods, and services to satisfy their needs and wants. And also it refers to the actions of the consumers in the marketplace and the underlying motives for those actions. The theory of consumers' behavior seeks to explain the determination of consumers' equilibrium. Consumers' equilibrium refers to a situation when a consumer gets maximum satisfaction out of his given resources. A consumer spends his money income on different goods and services in such a manner as to derive maximum satisfaction. Hence, it is more important to analyze the economic theory to understand the problem of determination of consumers' equilibrium.
Before we are going to learn about cardinal approach, we have to understand the meaning of utility, utility measurement, utility analysis, and the meaning of law of diminishing marginal utility. Meaning of utility. Utility is defined as the want-satisfying power of a commodity. Definition. According to Hibden, utility is the quality of a good to satisfy a want. Law of diminishing. Utility measurement. According to this approach, utility can be measured in cardinal numbers, like 1, 2, 3, 4, etc. Fisher has used the term util as a measure of utility. Thus, in terms of cardinal approach, it can be said that one gets from a cup of tea 5 util, from a cup of coffee 10 util. Let me explain you the meaning of utility analysis, or cardinal approach. The cardinal approach to the theory of consumer behavior is based upon the concept of utility. It assumes that utility is capable of measurement. The utility or satisfaction obtained from the consumption of goods and services can be measured by an imaginary unit called utils. Law of diminishing marginal utility. It basically falls in the category of microeconomics, but it is of equal and significant importance in our day-to-day decisions. The law of diminishing marginal utility holds that as we consume more of an item, the amount of satisfaction produced by each additional unit of that good declines. Explanation for the law of diminishing marginal utility as per Marshall's theory. Assume that a consumer consumes 6 apples one after another. The first apple gives him 20 utils, units for measuring utility. When he consumes the second and third apple, the marginal utility of each additional apple will be lesser. This is because with an increase in the consumption of apples, his desire to consume more apples falls. Assume that a consumer consumes 6 apples one after another. The first apple gives him 20 utils, units for measuring utility. When he consumes the second and third apple, the marginal utility of each additional apple will be lesser. This is because with an increase in the consumption of apples, his desire to consume more apples falls. We can explain this more clearly with the help of a schedule and diagram. In the above table, the 1 total utility obtained from the first apple is 20 util, which keep on increasing, total utility, until we reach our saturation point at 5th apple. On the other hand, 2 marginal utility keeps on diminishing with every additional apple consumed. When we consume the 6th apple, we have gone over the limit. Hence, the marginal utility is negative and the total utility falls. Let me explain you one of the main difference between saturation point and disutility. Saturation point is A. The point where the desire to consume the same product anymore becomes 0. Disutility is A. If you still consume the product after the saturation point, the total utility starts to fall. This is known as disutility. Let me explain you the assumptions. These are the assumptions of the law of diminishing marginal utility. 1. The utility is measurable and a person can express the utility derived from a commodity in qualitative terms such as 2 units, 4 units, and 7 units, etc. 2. A rational consumer aims at the maximization of his utility. 3. It is necessary that a standard unit of measurement is constant. 4. A commodity is being taken continuously. Any gap between the consumption of a commodity should be suitable. 5. There should be proper units of a good consumed by the consumer. 6. It is assumed that various units of commodity homogeneous in characteristics. 7. The taste of the consumer remains same during the consumption of the successive units of commodity. 8. Income of the consumer remains constant during the operation of the law of diminishing marginal utility. 9. It is assumed that the commodity is divisible. 10. There should be no change in fashion. For example, if there is a fashion of lifted shirts, then the consumer may have no utility in open shirts. Exceptions or limitations. The limitations or exceptions of the law of diminishing marginal utility are as follows. 1. The law does not hold well in the rare collections. For example, collection of ancient coins, stamps, etc. 2. The law is not fully applicable to money. The marginal utility of money declines with richness, but never falls to zero. 3. It does not apply to the knowledge, art, and innovations. 4. The law is not applicable for precious goods. 5. Historical things are also included in exceptions to the law. 6. Law does not operate if consumer behaves in a rational manner. For example, drunkard is said to enjoy each successive peg more than the previous one. 7. Man is fond of beauty and decoration. He gets more satisfaction by getting the above merits of the commodities. 8. If a dress comes in fashion, its utility goes up. On the other hand, its utility goes down if it goes out of fashion. 9. The utility increases due to demonstration. It is a natural element. Importance of the law of diminishing marginal utility. The importance or the role of the law of diminishing marginal utility is as follows. By purchasing more of a commodity, the marginal utility decreases. Due to this behavior, the consumer reduces expenditures to that commodity. In the field of public finance, this law has a practical application, imposing a heavier burden on the rich people. This law is the base of some other economic laws, such as law of demand, elasticity of demand, consumer surplus, and the law of substitution, etc. The value of commodity falls by increasing the supply of a commodity. It forms a basis of the theory of value. In this way, prices are determined. Now it's time to understand the meaning of ordinal utility analysis accordingly. Ordinal theory is also known as neoclassical theory of consumer equilibrium, Hicksian theory of consumer behavior, indifference curve theory, optimal choice theory. The concept of ordinal utility states that the level of satisfaction a consumer obtains after consuming various commodities cannot be measured in numbers, but can be arranged in the order of preference. The important tools of ordinal utility are 1. The concept of indifference curves. 2. The slop of IC, i.e. marginal rate of substitution. 3. The budget line. The indifference curve indicates the various combinations of two goods which yield equal satisfaction to the consumer. By definition, an indifference curve shows all the various combinations of two goods that give an equal amount of satisfaction to a consumer. And the assumptions. The indifference curve analysis is based on four main assumptions. Rational behavior of the consumer, a decision-making process that is based on making choices that result in the optimal level of benefit or utility for an individual, rational in making decisions from their expenditures on consumer goods. 2. Utility is ordinal. Utility cannot be measured cardinally. It can be, however, expressed ordinally. 3. Diminishing marginal rate of substitution. 4. Consistency in choice. For insistence. If the consumer prefers combinations of A of good to the combinations B of goods, he then remains consistent in his choice. His preference, during another period of time, does not change. Symbolically, it can be expressed as if A greater than B, then B greater than A. D. Consumer's preference, not self-contradictory. If A greater than B, and B greater than C, then A greater than C. 6. Goods consumed are substitutable. Here is an example to understand the indifference curve better. Peter has 1 unit of food and 12 units of clothing. Now, we ask Peter how many units of clothing is he willing to give up in exchange for an additional unit of food so that his level of satisfaction remains unchanged. Peter agrees to give up 6 units of clothing for an additional unit of food. Hence, we have 2 combinations of food and clothing giving equal satisfaction to Peter as follows. 1 unit of food and 12 units of clothing graphical representation. 2 units of food and 6 units of clothing. By asking him similar questions, we get various combinations as follows. Indifference curve analysis. It is a curve that represents all the combinations of goods that give the same satisfaction to the consumer. Since all the combinations give the same amount of satisfaction, the consumer prefers them equally. Hence the name indifference curve. It is a curve that represents all the combinations of goods that give the same satisfaction to the consumer. Since all the combinations give the same amount of satisfaction, the consumer prefers them equally. Hence the name indifference curve. 1. Indifference curve slope downwards to right. Thus, indifference curve is always convex, neither concave nor straight. 2. Indifference curve cannot intersect each other. 3. Higher indifference curve represents higher level of satisfaction. Property 1. Indifference curve slope downwards to right. When a consumer wants to have more of a commodity, she will have to give up some of the other commodity, given that the consumer remains on the same level of utility at constant income. As a result, the indifference curve slopes downward from left to right. 1a. Indifference curve is always convex, neither concave nor straight. Due to the diminishing marginal rate of substitution, the rate gives a convex shape to the indifference curve, always indifference curve in convex shape, neither concave nor straight. 2. Two indifference curve cannot intersect each other. Each indifference curve is a representation of particular level of satisfaction. The level of satisfaction of consumer for any given combination of two commodities is same for a consumer throughout the curve. Thus, indifference curves cannot intersect each other. 3. Higher indifference curve represents higher level of satisfaction. Higher the indifference curves, higher will be the level of satisfaction. This means any combination of two goods on the higher curve give higher level of satisfaction to the consumer than the combination of goods on the lower curve. Thank you.